Good morning. Thanks for joining us today here at XRAY 1895 with your host, Annette,
Brandie,
and Vicki. Today's topic is plutonium and the story of Karen Silkwood, the nuclear safety activist. And now Brandie is going to give us a history on plutonium.
Alright, we're going to start today talking about plutonium. Plutonium was discovered between 1940 and 1941 by Glenn Seaborg, Edwin McMillan, J.W. Kennedy, and A.C. Wall at the University of California at Berkeley. The discovery of the new element wasn't announced until after World War II had ended. Plutonium has an atomic mass of 244 and its atomic number is 94. It is not a good conductor of heat or electricity, but has a low melting point and an unusually high boiling point. Plutonium is mostly used as the explosive ingredient in nuclear weapons. Plutonium released during atmospheric testing of nuclear weapons, which ended in 1980, is the source of most of the plutonium in the environment worldwide. Plutonium is odorless and tasteless. If you inhale plutonium, some can get trapped in your lungs, and some can move to other parts of your body, such as the liver and your bones. If plutonium entered your lungs today, most of it would still be in your body 30 to 50 years later. You can develop cancer from plutonium, but it takes several years before cancer effects are apparent. Lung, bone, and liver cancer are most likely to develop. Plutonium leaves the body slowly in the urine and feces. Therefore, if suspected exposure to plutonium has occurred, urine and fecal samples would be taken and evaluated. The U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission recommends that radiation exposure limits for workers is 5 rem per year for workers in industries where exposure to radiation may occur. When plutonium decays, it divides into two parts. A small part we call alpha, and the remainder is called the daughter. During the decay process, alpha, beta, and gamma radiation are released. Plutonium can stay in the body for decades, but no human is known to have died because of inhaling or ingesting plutonium. And now I'll turn it over to Vicki to give you the story about Karen Silkwood.
Thank you, Brandie. Thank you. Karen Silkwood was born on February 19, 1946 in Longview, Texas. She was the eldest daughter of her family, having 2 younger sisters. She grew up in the small town of Netterland. As a child, she had an interest in science and was the only female student in her school's chemistry class. Her love of science earned her a scholarship to Lamar University in Beaumont. She dropped out of college only after 1 year to elope with William Meadows, an oil pipeline worker. For the next several years, she was a housewife and mother to 3 children. In 1972, she discovered her husband was having an extramarital affair, prompting her to leave the marriage, abandoning her children, ages 5, 3, and 18 months, to their father's care. She moved to Oklahoma City and took a $4 an hour job as a metallography tech at the Cimarron Plutonium plant operated by Kerr McGee near Crescent, Oklahoma, where she there met her boyfriend Drew and roommate Sherry. Her duties at the plant included polishing fuel rods packed with radioactive plutonium pellets. During her employment at the plant, she joined the Oil, Chemical, and Atomic Workers Union, becoming a member of the bargaining committee, the first woman to hold the position in the union's history. Her role was to investigate health and safety issues at the plant. In the summer of 1974, Karen saw hairline cracks in the nuclear fuel rods she was producing. She reported these imperfections, but the evidence was altered, allowing the rods to pass inspection. Karen reported these safety hazards to the union, becoming the first person to draw national attention about health violations at Kerr McGee. On October 1974, Karen testified before the AEC about safety hazards at Kerr McGee. At this meeting, she learned that handling plutonium could cause cancer. This came as a huge shock to her because for the past 2 years at the plant, while working 12-hour shifts, she had played many games with her co-workers, seeing who could make themselves the hottest with radiation. This prompted Karen to gather as much evidence as possible against the plant and disclose it to the union and a news reporter. For weeks, she carried around a notepad asking coworkers for any information on instances they had witnessed. She was able to collect large amounts of data, stockpiling evidence of missing plutonium from the plant. Amounts large enough to construct several nuclear bombs. She had reason to believe that someone was stealing the nuclear rods and selling them. November 5th, 1974 sparked a chain of events that changed Karen's life forever. We'll be right back.
There's going to be a lot of radiation. I don't want to glow.
Don't worry. Medical Arts uses special software and techniques to ensure the lowest radiation dose, 50 to 80% less.
Sure the images will be okay?
Excellent. No bones about it. And the radiologists reading them are subspecialized and trained at top hospitals.
Will I get fast results?
Same day.
Seems like I'm in the right place here at Medical Arts. I feel it in my bones.
Welcome back. On November 5th, Karen was in the metallography lab at her glove box, grinding and polishing plutonium pellets for the fuel rods. She prepared to leave and swiped her hands in front of the radiation monitor. The alarm sounded. Karen was contaminated. Karen registered 20,000 DPM, or about 9 nanocuries of radiation exposure. Karen went to the plant's health physics department and was given a nasal swipe, which is a test that measures a person's exposure to airborne plutonium, but might also measure plutonium that got on the nose from their hands. The swipe showed a moderate activity level of 160 DPM. The gloves at the glove box were examined. There were no holes in the gloves or plutonium on the inside of the glove, but there was plutonium on the outside. No plutonium was found on the surfaces in the room, and the air filters from the monitors showed no significant levels. Karen was given a rigorous decontamination shower and told to collect her urine and feces for 5 days to measure plutonium levels. Karen monitored herself before leaving and was clean. The next day, Karen came to work and did about an hour of paperwork, never stepping foot into the lab. On her way out for a meeting, Karen monitored herself and the alarm went off. Karen had activity on her hands, right arm, right side of her neck, and her face. She once again was given a decontamination shower. Karen requested that her locker and vehicle be checked with an alpha detector, but it showed nothing. On November 7th, Karen went to the health physics office before work to turn in her urine and fecal samples. She was given another nasal swipe test. The test showed alpha activity of 45,000 DPM in each nostril and 40,000 DPM around her nose, hands, arm, chest, neck, and right ear. A preliminary examination of her bioassay samples showed extremely high levels of activity, her fecal sample having 30,000 to 40,000 DPM. Her locker and car were once again checked for activity and were cleared yet again. After her third decontamination in a week, the health physicist followed Karen home to inspect it. Significant levels of activity were found in the bathroom and kitchen. The total amount in their apartment was less than 300 micrograms. No plutonium was found outside the apartment. Karen's roommate, Sherry, had 2 low levels on her body and was sent back to the lab for decontamination. Kerr McGee was concerned and sent Karen, her roommate Sherry, and her boyfriend Drew to Los Alamos for radiation testing. People started to speculate that Karen was contaminating herself. The 3 of them met Dr. Voles on November 11th at Los Alamos and gave urine samples, whole body and lung counts, as well as monitoring for external activity. The following day, Dr. Voles told Sherry and Drew they had minimal amounts of activity, but Karen had 3.34 nanocuries of americium-241, a gamma-emitting daughter of plutonium-241, in her lungs. From this quantity of americium, Dr. Voles estimated that Karen had 6 or 7 nanocuries of plutonium-239 in her lungs, but this was less than half the amount of admissible dose for radiation workers, which is 16 nanocuries. He said she shouldn't be concerned.
Sherry reported to work on November 13th as usual, but were restricted from working with radiation. After work, Karen attended a union meeting there in Crescent. At the meeting, Karen had a large manila folder filled with documents of safety concerns about Kerr McGee. After the union meeting, Karen headed for Oklahoma City for another meeting. She was going to deliver the folder to the news reporter and union rep. At 8:05 p.m., the Oklahoma Highway Patrol received a call of a one-vehicle accident 7 miles outside of Crescent. Karen was dead at the scene in what looked like a classic sleeping driver accident. The manila folder was not in her car when the union rep arrived an hour later. The coroner performed the autopsy with the help of Los Alamos because of her contamination risk. The lab took samples of her liver, lung, stomach, gastric tract, and bone to test for plutonium. Los Alamos found 3.2 nanocuries in her liver, 4.5 nanocuries in her lungs, and 7.7 nanocuries in her whole body. The highest concentration of plutonium-239 were in her gastric tract, 0.05 nanocuries in her duodenum, and 0.02 nanocuries in a fecal sample from her large intestine. This demonstrated that she had ingested plutonium prior to her death, with other testing proving it within 30 days of her death. The autopsy also showed that Karen had Quaalude, a sedative, in her system at the time of her death. The drug was in her bloodstream, and an undigested amount was found in her stomach. This was a prescribed medicine for Karen as she had trouble sleeping. In 1975, Kerr McGee struggled and was absorbed into Anadarko Petroleum. Last year, in 1986, the Silkwood family won a $1.6 million lawsuit against Kerr McGee. The AEC later released a report finding Kerr McGee had falsified quality inspection reports, as Karen alleged, and that her plutonium contamination could not have been self-inflicted. The specific plutonium makeup in her body was identified as material only available in restricted areas, areas Karen didn't have access to.
Although Karen Silkwood's death was reported to be a one-car accident, foul play is suspected due to her strong evidence against Kerr McGee and their lack of radiation safety. That's all for our program today. Thanks for joining us here on XRAY 1895.